Hi guys, my name is Spaghetti and this is going to be my ultimate archer guide. We'll be going over what bows to use, what arrows to use, the best talismans, the best armor, and even what you want to put in your wandering physics. To start with this build, you are going to want to equip yourself with both the Onsbach longbow and the bone bow that are both received in the DLC. What the bone bow Asher War does is it will rapidly fire arrows that will actually hone on to the target. So this will be how you get in some really quick shots. Now the Onsbach longbow is how you will begin almost any boss fight. The Asher War on this one actually launches 8 arrows at once and is by far the best overall bow in the game. An amazing combo that I found is to start a fight with 1 or 2 launches of the Asher War from the longbow, then quickly switch to the short bow and get the last few shots off to proc your bleed, scarlet rot, poison, etc. Now I really wish you could use 4 different arrows, but sadly the last 2 slots are only used for crossbows or great bow arrows. Fights that are longer, like fighting a dragon, is when you are really going to want to utilize scarlet rot arrows or even poison arrows, as poison arrows will proc really fast, and you will be changing your talismans around during this build around what arrow type, but we'll get into that. Another good idea is as soon as you proc your bleed, start firing off frost arrows. This will be especially useful once you get into the DLC bosses, or you use frost arrows in just replacement for bleed for anything that just can't proc bleed, like the Falling Star Beast, for example. But if you just want a 2 arrow combo that works better than anything else, in my opinion, that would be the bleed arrows and then the storm ring arrows. The reason you really want the storm ring arrows is they have the best posture breaking to them, and the talisman Enraged Divine Beast gives you a significant damage increase when using them, and they are just overall the strongest pure damage arrows in the game. As for the bleed arrows, this is because of how good bleed is in this game overall. It also leads us to our first armor piece. You are going to want to wear the white mask. That way, once you do proc bleed, you'll be doing even more damage. If you don't have bleed arrows and you are just using like scarlet rot or poison, it might be worth changing your helmet to the mushroom crown, as it is the same effect as white mask, just for rot or poison. Now, because a bow build is all about maximizing damage as quick as possible, you are going to want the rest of your armor set to be the Rikasha armor. I know I'm probably saying this wrong as well. English is pretty hard. But each piece gives you a 2% damage increase, with the downside of taking a bit more damage yourself. But from what I've read, it doesn't actually matter how many pieces you have equipped it, as you will only take damage equal to 1 piece. But don't quote me on that. I might be wrong. But overall, you're an archer. You want to be a glass cannon. However, if you don't like this debuff, just go ahead and equip yourself with whatever armor makes you take the most hits. All right, so the default talismans are going to be the Enraged Divine Beast for extra damage with the storm arrows. Then you're going to put the Arrow Sting, the Sorin Arrow Sting, and the Shard of Alexander. Now, depending on the fight, I will often change out that first talisman, because if I'm not using the Stormring arrows in a fight, then I would just switch to something like Lord of Blood Exhalation that will give me even more bleed damage, or the Kindred of Rot Exhalation is another good option for when you're doing rot or poison, of course. You could use the Ritual Sword Talisman, as it gives you 10% extra damage at full HP, but it's not going to combo well with what I recommend for using as your physics. Also, I found that like using a bow, because a lot of the time you just get stuck in the arrow animation, I often just get hit really early on in these boss fights. But the first 4 that I said is what I recommend as your default setup. As for stats, with bleed being your go-to arrow for damage out the gate, try to get as close to 80 arcane as possible. As for the rest, pump it into both dex and strength, as both bows that you will be using scale with D. As for vigor, mind, and endurance, prioritize endurance, then vigor, then mind. I say this because both the Asher Wars on these bows are not super thirsty on mana, and we got a flash for when we do run out. As for stamina, you will find yourself often just spamming a barrage of arrows, and you need that extra stamina. For our wandering physics, the blood-sucking crack tier will give you extra attack, but it will drain your HP. But because you are an archer, you are going to find that you often just kind of have time to heal, because you're playing from afar. I'm actually currently doing a no heal run, so I opted just not to use physics at all during my run. But for your second one, I recommend the Viridian Hidden Tier, as it will give you 10 seconds of unlimited stamina, so you can just spam those arrows all you like. Last thing worth noting after extensive testing, fire arrows, magic arrow, and holy arrows all seem pretty well useless. Even the bosses that have weakness to them just lose health faster if you're just proc and bleed or frost. So I recommend just not wasting your time with them. All right, guys, hope this video helped you guys become the ultimate archer. Let me know in the comments on anything that I can improve in my next build video.